Thank you so much for having me, Kimberly. And everyone, thank you for making time to listen to what I'll share with you about our Africa Research Integrity Project, which involves capacity building for African research ethics and review boards. And with the objective of research integrity and the impact on research ethics and review boards with a focus on scholarly publishing. So before I get into the project, I'll take you through who we are and why we decided to get into this project. So TCC Africa is an award-winning research capacity trust established in 2006, and we provide capacity support in improving researchers' output and visibility through scholarly and science communication. And we have 4 active programs. One is Open Science and Advocacy. Another one is which you've been seeing, where we work with governments and we work with the research institutes in creating awareness on open science principles with the objective of producing with the objective of the respective institutes or countries producing open science policies. And we've been very successful with that, with working with the East African Science and Technology Commission in Eastern Africa, where we have the first regional, where open science has been included for the first time in the STI policy, in the regional STI policy. And the reason why we are so happy about this is because it involved working with 7 governments, 7 presidents, and 7 ministers of higher education who all agreed that East Africa needed an open science policy. And those are some of the highlights on the open science advocacy. We also work with higher education institution organizations, whereby we hold capacity building programs on supporting the higher education institution leaders in understanding why we need to adopt open science. Then we have an open infrastructure, and in it is our flagship project, which is the Africa PID Alliance, where we are striving to produce African-originated persistent identifiers with the objective of improving and streamlining data management practices within our institutions, especially in the schools of social sciences and arts and humanities in universities, museums, cultural heritage institutions, because we noticed that in the social sciences, especially when you're looking at cultural heritage and indigenous knowledge, there was a disconnect on data management as compared to other research areas. So what we've produced is a persistent identifier. Actually, we're excited about it because version 1.0 is already live. It's called the Digital Object Container Identifier, which can support the ecosystem from the collection on cultural heritage to all the outputs that a researcher will produce, connecting museums, collections, libraries, research offices, grants offices, and the libraries, and connecting all of them to the collection itself, and all within a persistent identifier with the data staying in Africa. And then another activity that we have is another program that we have is capacity building, and which was really what how TCC Africa started. And the capacity building is on the training on scholarly and science communication, especially for early career researchers. And that grew into supporting research institutions and universities in capacity strengthening for their leadership, and now also with governments as well. And of course, our final active program is on higher education stakeholder engagement, which also includes sub-activities like sub-programs like internationalization, whereby we are supporting universities and aiding them in improving their competitiveness. So, as I said, we are based at the University of Nairobi, and our values, especially when we choose to work with any partner and in any program that we intend to launch, is collaborative, supportive. We don't mind the hand-holding process, and it's goal-oriented. And you'll understand why this is important, especially when we launched the Africa Research Integrity Project. Over the years, we have supported over 39,000 researchers, trained over 8 institutes, worked in over 40 countries, and we have a community membership of over 900 researchers. And these are active researchers we communicate with. We've taken advantage of WhatsApp as a tool to communicate and engage with researchers and guide them from research idea to publishing. So in that group, we have not only funders, but we have master's students, PhD students, postdocs, and professors, and we guide them in the entire life cycle. Because the reality is that not all students get this kind of support unless they're in funded projects. So we are really excited about having a mentorship group with over 900 researchers whom we actively support throughout. And it's truly exciting to see them graduate and publish their work through the ecosystem that we've created for them. So it builds a very strong communities of practice on improving scholarly communication, understanding publishing, understanding the publishing ecosystem, but most importantly, also understanding the elements and values on research ethics. So how are we promoting open knowledge and dissemination? We look at the research life cycle of the higher education system, and there we work with research councils, granting councils, libraries, and university commissions. And in that ecosystem, we look at how we can work with them through education, facilitation, and partnership. And if you look at, and as I take you through the research integrity project, we are working with research councils, and in some cases, university libraries, and in some cases, granting councils or even university commissions. Literally, in the examples that we have trained so far last year includes either a research council we worked with, a university commission, or a granting council, all of them being government representatives. And the objective of how we are working with them and facilitating this project is through education, facilitation, and partnership. So our goals in promoting open knowledge and dissemination are focused on training, supporting, and empowering our respective partners or researchers so that they'll be able to build their capacity in improving their research output and visibility. And of course, research integrity is a means to an end in improving research output and also increasing the visibility of the said research as well. Now, our capacity building ecosystem, as I started earlier, focuses on journal selection strategies, so that rather advancing scholarship through smart strategies in mitigating predatory publishing. And we use this as part of the components in the trainings that we are, and the capacity building that we are offering to governments. Adoption of preprints, basically open science ecosystems that can aid in improving the visibility. We're also looking at how governments and institutions can maximize their research, improving the quality and the visibility and the impact of their institutional research. We're looking at higher education leadership excellence, and that is, how do you increase your ranking? And the reality is, we cannot bury our heads in the sand and say, to hell with the rankings. We know they have their faults, and we can't deny that. So we cannot be, I like using this word cautiously, we cannot be irresponsible and say no to rankings. What we can say is choose rankings that work for you, but understand how the ranking system works, because the reality is that universities are looking at how they can be competitive, and they look at rankings as one of the ways. So all this is embedded into research integrity, because you need to look at various trust markers that you can look out for, especially as an ethical review board member, if you're looking at collaborations, internationalization, and any aspect on research ethics in publishing, because they do contribute to ranking. And I talked about strengthening knowledge economies, and this one is through our open science advocacy program, where we work with governments or supranational governments like the East African Science and Technology Commission in East Africa. In West Africa, we are working with the economic states of West African states, ECOWAS. In North Africa, which is the latest development, is the Arab States Research Education Network. So in making sure that we're strengthening knowledge in economies, in adopting open science and advocating for open science in their respective region. The adoption of open science is in connection with the strengthening of knowledge economies, and of course, finally, is improving library and information literacy excellence within the institutions. So now let's get right into the Africa Research Integrity Project. Now, we've had a long relationship with our partner Digital Science, and this started in 2019. And when we partnered with Digital Science, one of the things we sat down and asked ourselves was that why is there a low representation on African output in various citation databases? So the onus of our partnership was to see how we could work together in increasing content coming out of Africa, not only in their platforms, dimensions, and the likes, but also by default subsequent databases. So we rolled out quite a number of projects, and as we were working together with them over the years, the issues of integrity kept on coming up, because we are working with the governments. We were working with the governments, and in order to work with the governments, you need to win their trust. Particularly if you're working with an African government. African governments have burnt their fingers. They've experienced loss of data when they're working with partners, especially Global North partners. They have firsthand seen how there are disparities on how Global North authors work with Global South authors, and also recognition. They've lost data. They do not have access to data that they helped work on with their Global North partners. So when you're working with African governments, it's all about building trust. And every single time we were working with Digital Science, especially when it came to thought leadership on awareness, on having access to open access resources, that research discovery resources that they could work with, or maybe working with them in indexing African governments that fund research within their databases. All the governments just came back to us with the same concern. We have issues trusting our stakeholders. We have issues on, we have challenges on how research integrity is misused, especially when it comes to collaborations. And it's because of that, these concerns, as I said, this has taken over since 2019. It's not something that we thought of last year. It started in 2019, and it was then last year, that the year before last, that we decided to come up with a concept on how we can build the capacities of African research ethic review boards on understanding the extended version of research ethics, not pre-research, but now post-research. So ours is very unique in the sense that we are not training research ethic board reviewers on research ethics. They were trained on that, but we are training them and building their capacities on understanding the complexities of research ethics post-research. And it was answering various questions on author relationship, respectful collaborations, open science, even open access, to be specific, open access, predatory publishing. These are all the spectrums, data management, and these are all the spectrums that they raised as concerns. And it's because of that we put the concept note together, and last year we launched the project. We felt it was premature to launch it announce it when we had we felt it was premature to announce it when we had just launched the project, because we wanted to see if it would actually work. That is number one. And remember, I talked about the distrust that governments have, African governments have, with partners, especially from the Global North. So we felt that let's win the trust first. And we're getting there. Let's win the trust first and have a few governments that we can work with, so that we can now have something to talk about and say, okay, these are the governments we've worked with, and we have a healthy pipeline of other governments that are interested in us. So now going to the actual matter, and why do we feel that research integrity is important? And I've shared with you some of the concerns that the governments were sharing with us when we were having various interactions with them on various thought leadership activities. So to us, why it matters, and for all of you who are in the ecosystem of research integrity, it's about ensuring trust in scientific finding, preventing research misconduct. And there's the obvious ones that we know, like fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism. But then there are bigger ones where you're looking at collaborations, where collaboration is misused or abused, authorship misrepresentation, or lack of recognition of authors from the global south. And so because of that, we felt that we needed to look at the following principles within our ecosystem. So that is honesty, objectivity, transparency, reproducibility, and accountability. How can we use those elements, especially when we are creating the capacity building program? So when we started working with the research ethics and review boards, the first thing we asked ourselves, who are we going to train? Because it's so easy to just have a general workshop on research ethics and research integrity. So we became very targeted. And we chose to work with governments and have the governments invite their national research ethics board members and review board members. So literally, the way we structured it, we made sure that the government would invite all the university research ethics board members and all the universities, research institutions, and hospitals research ethics board members. And this, as I said, it had its challenges, but we are seeing some really positive responses on what we've done so far. So our objective was aimed at strengthening the research ethics and enhancing review boards and promoting responsible research practices across the continent. And why did we choose the research review board? As I said, we felt that these were the people who not only are involved in research ethics pre-research, but they needed to be compliant and understand the ecosystem post-research, so that they can understand they can understand the integrity challenges, the research integrity challenges, and opportunities that exist that could be helpful to them. So the challenges that they should be aware of, and the opportunities that they should be aware of and support their respective communities. So what does the initiative address? So the initiative addresses key challenges such as preventing research misconduct, improving data governance, upholding ethical publishing standards to foster trust in scholarly communication, and also by actively engaging national and institutional ethics review boards, researchers, policymakers, and funders. So as such, the project seeks to establish a sustainable framework for ethical research conduct in Africa. So as you can see, when you know that you're going to be working with the government in supporting this, when you're going to be working with the government in any project, there's a lot of grunt work involved. So it means building the trust of the government to the point that they are willing to share their community with you so that you can support them. But it goes beyond that. So once you've done the webinars, it's going back to them and seeing how further we can support them in making them understand the various concepts in research integrity post research, but now into the publishing ecosystem. So the vision of the initiative is strengthening ethics, enhancing review boards, and strengthening research ethics, enhancing review boards, and promoting responsible research practices across the continent. So why does this matter to us? Research integrity, as I've highlighted before, research integrity in Africa faces challenges like predatory publishing, weak regulatory frameworks, and unethical research practices. And all this leads to, as I said, loss of data, loss of access to data loss of access to data, poor representation of African authors, especially in collaboration. Yes, we could talk about helicopter science, but as we say in Kenya, that things on the ground are different. So you could talk about it in the global north, but then when the tire meets the road and you're working with some of the global north partners, you find that you're still at a disadvantage. And this is because we have weak regulatory frameworks and unethical risk. And the partners might be aware of these weak regulatory frameworks, and then they'll be just opportunistic about it. And you may ask yourself, why would they do this? Remember, higher education today is competitive. It is competitive when it comes to funding, the kind of collaborations you're going to make. It is competitive, and not everybody will focus will have an element of trust or go through proper research integrity practices if working with your stakeholders. So if you have weak frameworks, that's a loophole. So that is why we felt this is an advocacy and awareness campaign to support these research and ethics review boards. So we are working with universities, research review board funders to build a sustainable ecosystem for ethical research as well. So when we started, the first country we worked in was in Ethiopia. That was last year. It was in Ethiopia, and we worked with the library library consortia, who invited all the stakeholders for the workshop. That was a blended workshop, and that was hosted at Addis Ababa University. And then the second one was in Ghana, and we worked with the Ghanaian Tertiary Education Commission. And the third one we did was in Uganda, and that one was hosted by the Uganda National Council for Science and Technology. As you can see, Uganda was led by a research council. In Ghana, it was led by a Tertiary Education Commission, which is a regulator for all the universities. In Ethiopia, it was led by the library consortia, which had the support system from the Ministry of Higher Education, in Ethiopia. So this whole process, it is a very slow burning process, and we have quite a number of we have a healthy pipeline of more governments reaching out to us to see how we could work with them. And as I said, going back to the life cycle of the higher education system. So we are working with either university commissions, granting councils, research councils, or consortia, library consortia, which have active support from the government. Now, the areas that we are focusing on include responsible conduct of research, understanding global and local research ethics, ethical publishing practices, and avoiding predatory journals, which it turns out is constant in all the countries we've trained, because the ethical board members have no clue how to start even creating awareness on mitigating predatory publishing. So it looks like a small issue, but then you realize it's a bigger problem when these members who represent institutions are not able to even support their respective academic communities. Understanding trust markers on respective collaboration, especially when it comes to working with authors in various collaborations, such that there is proper representation between global north and global south partners. Understanding the concept of retractions and impacts it has on the academic communities. Most of them have heard about retractions, but they do not understand what that means and the impact it will make, especially on how and on where they've published, and future and potential places on where they intend to publish. So making them understand the whole concept of retractions and their impact is so important, and also sharing with them what the various use cases that are happening globally that they can learn from. And also, I mean, the general feel is to help them increase awareness on ethical publishing practices, which with the rise of open science has become so, it was, before it used to be kind of hidden. And now when open science is, before it even, when open science became more than a buzzword, now it is a movement. All of a sudden, we are very conscious about ethical publishing practices. And it's not an issue of saying talking about having journals indexed in citation databases or bibliographic databases. It's the nuances about the ethics behind publishing and how do you share your data, you know, that entire process from when you submit to when it is accepted. So we are increasing the way, and also what publishers are looking out for when it comes to ethical publishing practices. Now, these are the 3 workshops that we did last year. So you can see the one in Ethiopia, that one was blended, and the one in Ghana, in Makere, the one in Uganda, which was hosted by the Uganda National Council of Science and Technology, and the one below is from Ghana. Now, we've been honored to have amazing speakers from PLOS. We've had speakers from Retraction Watch. We've had speakers from Retraction Watch. We've also had speakers from digital science, Retraction Watch, and PLOS. And now what is actually exciting right now is that as we are preparing our pipeline for this year, we have had interest from ORCID as well. So we are looking forward to including you as our panel of speakers and also experts when we are creating this awareness on building the capacity, research integrity capacity of African Research Ethic Reviewer Boards. And that's it from me. And I thank you so much for making time for listening to me.
Yeah, thank you for such a wonderful presentation, Joy. We really appreciate it. I want to kick off the Q&A by asking both you a question and the audience a question. So audience, please feel free to share in the chat. What is one word that comes to mind when you hear research integrity? Any thoughts, Joy? Is there's just one certain thing I'm seeing in the chat? Trust, ethics.
Yes. Yeah, trust, ethics, accountability. Yeah.
Longevity. Yeah.
Yes.
Lots of good answers. Honesty. Yeah. Trust markers. It's a good one.
Yes.
Great. Audience, please feel free to keep sharing with us. And then Joy, could you expand a little bit more and tell us why is there such a focus on targeting research ethic boards?
Because first of all, they were ignored. Let's start from there. It is so easy to when you're looking at research integrity, it's so easy to focus on the researcher, but we tend to forget that before any research is conducted, there's one person that they need to get authorization from, and that is the ethics review board within the institute or at the government level. And if that person is not aware of the various aspects, the evolution of research ethics post-research, it means that you're a bit vulnerable on the support that they can provide you. So when we were looking at the research ethics review board members, we noticed that they were quite aware of everything and anything to do with ethics before you conduct research. And if you ask them on aspects post-research in publishing, author representation, how to have responsible internationalization practices, you know, because which will feed into collaboration, they were clueless. And when you look at the competitiveness of a university, they look at all those aspects. You like, what kind of collaborations did you have? What level of internationalization did you have? Where did you publish? And if they do not understand that entire ecosystem that can actually support the same researcher that they guided prior to conducting the research, the whole process is moot. So we are left in the background. So the kind of work we do is, the kind of capacity building we do is so strategic and targeted. So would to the community that would in turn support the greater academic community in preparing themselves to work post-research. Because, you know, through the research process is easy. Post-research, now you're looking at publishing. And now critically looking at your internationalization, support, collaboration. So how are we going to make this work? You know, especially if you're going to look at future funding, if you're going to look at future funding of potentially new collaborations. And giving the example of the colloquial statement I mentioned, things on the ground are different. When you come from the global south, you are constantly reminded why you are getting the funding. The nuances are there. Let's not even pretend. Let's not pretend that it doesn't exist. It does exist. And because of that, a lot of things go through the loop, fall through the cracks. Okay? So with that in place, we need to be a bit, so the most powerful person in this case will not be I as the researcher, it will be the regulator and the review board. The regulator who has the research, who is in charge of research ethics, and the review board member within the university. And if you empower that person, it also in turn empowers the researcher as well. So this is why we targeted them. Yeah.
Thank you, Joy. That's a very insightful answer. And as you bring up some of the nuances between the global north and the global south, do you feel that priorities are different for the global south and global north when it comes to research integrity?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I think I answered that a bit too quickly, but yes. Yes. Because you see, the global north, and it's not the entire global north, so it's the mature global north that has been practicing research integrity, have different priorities as compared to the global south, in the sense that for us now, we are beginning to just understand what it means. And, you know, in the workshops that we've done, they're talking about predatory publishing. You know, it's something I wouldn't expect to hear today, because you'd think that there's enough awareness on it. But in literally all the 3 countries we've done these activities, that was the one constant. So for the global south, I would comfortably say it's back to basics on understanding research ethics post-research, research integrity post-research. So publishing aspects, understanding how we can have better mutually respective internationalization partnerships and collaborations as well. So it's slightly different. But also that mutual respect, even if we are the ones receiving the money, you know, that mutual respect has to be there, such that we don't feel like, oh yes, it's a favor you're doing for us. Yes, we need the money, and yes, but so we still need each other to conduct the research. So that mutual respect has to be there, such that issues pertaining to integrity do not come up. Yeah.
Yeah. That mutual respect piece is so important. A question that we've gotten from the audience is, do you think private company researchers will adhere to more research integrity, or will private-public partnerships help this ecosystem, or do you see challenges faced there?
The good thing about, yes, that private company researchers will still have to go through the government, won't they? And this is like, now you see why we are targeting them, not the researchers. We are targeting the government. So if you empower the governments in this, it means that they are more aware and they'll be able to, and they'll be more aware, and then we create policies that can support these ecosystems. Because in countries, even in the global south, in countries where the issue of research integrity is not as bad as certain countries, is because the research ethics and review board members have been empowered, starting from the government. That is why we have to make sure that the government is involved in this process. Okay, starting from the government down to the research, to the institutional research ethics review board members. But then, as some of the participants had said, we need to have policies set in place and frameworks, clear frameworks and policies, so that we protect our ecosystem. So private-public partnerships can also help in the ecosystem, where we are creating the awareness on it. But the most important thing is that once you empower the government and their respective targeted communities, the rest will just be like a domino effect on how it can support the government. And yes, it is normally the private company researchers and some of the top universities from the global north that are notorious for this. Yeah.
And then speaking of getting involved with the government, can you expand a little bit on how geopolitical happenings both interfere and contribute to science diplomacy?
Yes. Oh, goodness. From Africa, right?
Yeah.
Let's start from there. It's never a dull moment in this continent. There'll be a moment of peace, and then one country will flare up, or there are sanctions in another country. There's never a dull moment. And then because of that, unfortunately, there are certain countries our partners cannot work in, even stand-up pre-recording. So it's unfortunate that we have to sometimes have a delicate balance with our global north partners who are involved in this project, and also even the speakers as well, even some of the speakers in taking part in some of the workshops that we are going to host. And this is why one of the things we are doing is within our workshops is having training of trainers within our workshop, such that in the event we are not able to get a global north partner, we can get somebody from the global south who can support that, who can support still conduct and support the training. And also at times, we have partners who want to work with us, and they are global north partners who want to work with us, and they are persona non grata in some of the African countries. And it's not because of them as an institute, but it's because of the government they are from. And we are already seeing this in certain parts of the continent, and that needs a delicate balance in looking at the big picture in supporting the higher education sector. So this whole process, that it looks rosy when we say we are working with governments, but it is really a very slow snail crawling on honey process, and a delicate balance on managing science policy and mitigating some of the challenges that come with the policies in supporting the respective countries in this project as well. Yeah.
And then another question that's just come in, could you give an example of a specific policy that could come from the government that will encourage research integrity?
Governments right now are the higher education sector within government right now are focusing on internationalization. And the good thing about internationalization, it covers various aspects. You're looking at transnational education, you're looking at research collaboration, you're looking at mobility. And there's a lot of funding there. And that is the one bit where governments can actually loop in having research ethics, because under internationalization is where you'll have all the global north, or maybe even the global south researchers coming into your country, or vice versa. So right now, there are very few policies, if any, really, on research integrity post research integrity post actual research. So the best way to go about it is through their internationalization programs. And as I said, this is where governments are really heavily investing on, and we are seeing universities having internationalization strategies, and that is where you can loop in elements of research ethics post-research, because there is quite a lot of policy on research integrity before you conduct your research, before you get your research permit. But after that, close to nothing. So you can ride on what governments are looking at as a hot cake, and that is internationalization, because it comes with all the plethora of whether you're looking at collaboration, how you're going to deal with authors, how you're going to deal with funding, and also transnational education when you're looking at quality assurance of joint programs, you know. So, and also mobility, either way, whether it's from the global north and south and vice versa. So that would be such a low-hanging fruit for research in this level of, for an expansion on research integrity policies to be included in that.
Great, thank you, Joy. Another hot topic just in the world lately is artificial intelligence. And someone is asking, as AI applications are increasing, so will the use. Do you see this helping to resolve research integrity, or do you think it's going to create more chaos?
Let's not be scared of technology. Let's start from there. There'll be something else that will come which will be better than AI. But this question came up also in the Uganda workshop. How do we handle AI? Number one, it's creating awareness on what AI can do, okay? And setting policies to the degree in which you can use AI in your research, post your research as well. And also using tools that can also help detect the AI. Remember, prior to us talking about AI, we were talking about what? Plagiarism, and what tools can help in mitigating plagiarism. And then there's this whole movement on creating awareness on plagiarism and the various tools that you can use. It is the same thing. There'll always be new technologies coming in, new developments in higher education. The first thing is, let's understand what this technology is. How can we best use it? How can we not abuse it? And how can we identify when it is being abused? And that these are all elements that you can that need to be included in updated or upgraded research integrity policies post research. Yeah.
And then you brought up the workshops, specifically the Uganda one. Can you give us just a brief idea of what the structure of those workshops is and what is covered?
Oh, it was in my slides. So let me go through that again. So in the Uganda, in the workshops, what we covered was let me go through that again, was responsible conduct of research, understanding the global and research ethics, understanding global and local research ethics, ethical publishing practices, avoiding predatory publishing, because that kept on coming up, understanding trust markers on respective collaboration, because remember I told you that is the one thing everybody kept on saying, how do we respect African authors in this whole process? And understanding the concept of retractions and its impact on the academic community, and also the general increasing of awareness on publishing practices. And this is why we are very strategic about the speakers we're inviting, because now we had the team from Retraction Watch, so they're making us understand the concept of retractions. All the countries we worked with, none of them had heard about, they knew that there was something about retraction, but they did not quite understand how that worked and why it worked and the impact it would have on them. So we had teams from Retraction Watch. We had the head of publishing ethics from PLOS ONE, so that we could understand the concept of ethics from a publishing perspective. By the time now you're sending your manuscript to them, what should you be aware of? And you see, if you're not familiar with those concepts, you'll be blindly just sharing your manuscripts because you want to publish your work, not knowing that there are some ethical considerations on how you share your data, to the degree to which you can share your data, and the likes to the publishers. And then we had digital science talking about trust markers. So the various markers that you can use to identify elements of research integrity. Yeah.
And then can you share a bit about who is invited to attend the workshops or how people learn more about them so they can attend?
Okay, so the way we go about it is that once we've partnered with the national collaborator, the national collaborator will invite the research ethics review boards. So this is led, so we come in as, to a certain degree, as a technical facilitator, and the host is the government as well. So in some cases, like in the case of Uganda, they went and booked a hotel, and they had a national research ethics board meeting, and then they allocated 3 hours to us. In the case of Ethiopia, they just dedicated a day for us. In the case of Uganda, Ghana, they dedicated 2 hours for us just on research integrity. So, but it's the national government partner who invites them. But by the time now you build the trust with the national government partner, you need to show the history of how we've worked with that respective government in supporting their respective communities. So it's, as I said, it's a slow burn, and I use the term, it's a snail crawling on honey, slow, because you're dealing with the government. There'll be different administrations, and then you have to go back to scratch and tell them, why is this important? And also building their trust, because they're like, but you're working with the global north, the same region where we've lost data. Why should we trust you? So it's also building the trust on the various stakeholders and what they stand for in terms of ethics and integrity when it comes to post-research. Yeah.
So it definitely takes a lot of patience and
Oh God,
tenacity.
yes. Oh God, yes, it does. It does. Working with governments is not a walk in the park. So for us to do 3 in a year, I was quite pleased with myself.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
excellent work.
yeah.
So this next question also provides some context. But at
Mm,
the UKSG conference in Brighton last week, a
mm,
presenter from Ghana identified the need
mm,
for African researchers and institutions to develop their own capacity and skills for digital publishing of research outputs. So
mm.
the question is, to what extent are organizations and partners in the global north, such as publishers and universities, willing to partner with African organizations to share best practices and develop infrastructure to support these important goals? And what more needs to be done to address the equity and visibility of the problems?
Okay, so that speaker is Mark Anthony. So Mark Anthony from Calig in Ghana. He's been a regular speaker at the UKSG. And yes, the first question is, and this is I always make our partners, unfortunately, uncomfortable when I ask this, is that what are your interests in Africa? How long do you intend to stay on the continent? Is this going to be a thumbtack on your map and say, oh yes, we've done this, and then now let's move on? Or is it going to be a geographical marker to say that we are in Africa, and to just show our diversity on where we're working? And in that case, so if we narrow that down, is how far do you intend to go beyond the obvious commercial capitals in Africa? So in that case, South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Egypt. Because out of the 54 countries, there is 50 other countries that would need the similar support. So if publisher is able to answer that question, and how long are they willing to stay, bearing in mind the geopolitical dynamics in the continent? Because as I'd mentioned, this thing is always happening in this continent. Something is always happening. How long are they willing to stay? Because we've heard of such amazing initiatives coming up and then collapsing because I've just asked all those questions. Well, oh, Africa is too hard. Oh, it's not stable. Oh, Africa is expensive. But it is Europe and the global, pretty much the global north is already saturated. You cannot deny that. You'll be looking to the global south and you'll be looking to Africa where we are adopting new technologies. We've seen what has worked, what hasn't worked in publishing. There are few publishers that have tried. And the reality, there are a few publishers that have tried to work with African partners in coming up with publishing ecosystems. And the reality is that because publishing is so competitive, and the fact that we as Africans are still building our publishing ecosystems, and we're doing a good job. We've got preprint repositories, the Continental One, Africa Archive, but we also have institutional repositories. University of South Africa has a preprint repository, University of Pretoria. I mean, we have the publishing platform set up by University of Cape Town. You see, we're doing something. The activities that we're trying to do. And the problem is, even with those platforms, and due to the competitiveness of publishing, we're in a situation where even African publishers, African researchers are not using those platforms. Why? Because we've created a narrative of competitiveness, which I understand. The higher education ecosystem is competitive. We've created we've created this narrative of competitiveness such that we are guiding researchers to publish in certain journals. And in turn, what global north publishers are doing, and I believe some of them are in this webinar, is that what they are doing is that they are setting up regional journals in those areas where they are targeting. So you'll have a journal targeting the global south or a journal targeting Africa, but it still has the title name of that publisher, which the university has said you have to publish in. So there is a catch-22 whereby you may want to invest in Africa, but then it's how do you invest in Africa? Do you want to stay long-term and go through the doldrums of it, be patient, and then because there are great returns when you invest in the continent? Or do you in turn just set up a regional journal and cannibalize on the market, which they're already doing? And we as Africans who are setting up publishing platforms, what does that mean for us? Because we've said, how do we come out of the collegial perspective of publishing and become as competitive as those global north partners? So there are various ways to look at it. And number one, it just goes back to, if you have an interest in the continent, long-term, not short-term, not thumbtack, diversity. No, don't look at us as a diversity case. No, look at us as a business market case, and it makes sense. If you look at us as a diversity case, you'll be tired after 5 years. Okay, look at us as a business case. Then you build the relationships. All right, then also build the trust, because the reason why we have some of the publishers working with local publishing platforms in Africa and not being successful is because you've not built the trust. You need to build that trust, okay? And also for the publishers who choose the roundabout route of saying, okay, let's just open a regional journal for Africa, it makes business sense, but then you cannibalize on African institutions that are trying to be self-sustainable in coming up with their own publishing platforms. Yes. But on our side, we need to do our part. We need to produce publishing platforms that are equally competitive. So it's really a loaded question with a loaded answer. There are so many ways to go around it. But first of all, it means that you need to have an interest in the continent long term. And don't look at us as diversity segmentation. It's a business case. It needs to make business sense. Yeah.
Yeah, more of that mutual respect and mutual trust is definitely needed. Yes. We are coming to the end of our time. So for my last question, with everyone on the call, I know there was a lot of interest indicated at registration is people want to find ways, they're inspired by the work that you and your team have done to implement this within their own nations and their own regions. And from what we've heard of the long, hard work that you all have put into this, it definitely takes a lot of patience and tenacity. But is there any advice or areas to start that you would suggest for those who are inspired by the work that you've done?
If you're working at an institution, if you're within your institute, look at the ethics and review board associations within your country, because while you have the government, which can bring in all the members, but then they do have associations. See how you can start with building the capacity for the associations. Start with creating this awareness within the research ethics conferences, the national ones that you have, and the national workshops that you may have, or workshops that you may have. And if it comes, that is the low-hanging fruit. And if you want to go the government route, I strongly suggest you come not only with yourself, but also with partners globally who are involved in research integrity, because it's about knowledge sharing. What we are going through is just not giving them knowledge, but it's knowledge sharing. It's very reflective. The kind of workshops we are hosting are reflective. So it's just not we're taking you through the process, but it's also understanding what are your challenges. So, but how would you go about it? So make it more of a reflective exercise, but just know it's a slow burn if you're going through the government. So the low-hanging fruits, go through the associations and the national workshops, which are normally hosted within your respective institutes, and then you can start from there. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, again, I just want to thank you for your time today, for giving such a wonderful presentation and answering so many questions that we all had. We will be sharing both the recording and the materials after the session. And if anyone has any questions or would like further insight, please feel free to reach out to us and we can connect you with Joy. But thank you, Joy. We really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who joined us today.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.